The story begins in an advanced intergalactic academy, where a group of alien students from various peaceful species arrives for an educational exchange program. This academy is a hub for sharing knowledge, cultures, and experiences across the universe. The students are excited to learn about Earth, a planet known for its diverse wildlife, vibrant cultures, and extraordinary technological advancements. But nothing could prepare them for the shocking truth they were about to discover. The Earthlings, proud of their planet and survival skills, had arranged a special event to welcome the alien visitors. It was called the Earth Feast, and it would showcase the planet's unique cuisine. The humans, many of whom were military personnel and survival experts, were eager to share their heritage. The feast was designed to display the foods that had been a central part of human culture for centuries, foods that were once essential for survival but had now evolved into a beloved part of daily life. The alien students, however, had never encountered anything like this before. Their species had long ago evolved to live without violence and without harming other living creatures. Most of the students came from peaceful races that viewed their ecosystems as delicate, sustaining only plant-based life. To them, meat eating was considered a brutal relic of a barbaric past. As the students entered the dining hall, they noticed something strange. The tables were laden with large platters of roasted meats, steaks, and dishes that seemed to be made from animals. The humans, seemingly unfazed, smiled and greeted the visitors warmly, inviting them to sit and join the feast. But the alien students were hesitant. They exchanged uncertain glances, their faces reflecting disbelief and unease. They couldn't understand why humans would willingly consume the bodies of other creatures. One of the alien students, a young female from a peaceful species, spoke up. "Is this really food?" she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of confusion and disgust. The others looked at her with similar expressions, wondering how they were supposed to react to this strange practice. They had studied Earth's wildlife, but they had never been told that humans were carnivores. To them, it felt wrong, almost barbaric. As the humans began to explain the history behind their food choices, the tension in the room thickened. They spoke casually about hunting, the ancient survival skills that had allowed humanity to flourish on a planet full of dangerous creatures. They described how early humans had to fight for their lives, using tools and strategies to hunt animals for sustenance. The alien students listened, stunned. They couldn't fathom a world where killing animals was necessary for survival, let alone a world where it was celebrated. The young female alien student, still in shock, couldn't tear her eyes away from the meat. The sight of the cooked flesh made her stomach churn, and she instinctively took a step back. Her thoughts raced. How could these humans be so savage? The idea of eating meat seemed so alien to her that it was almost incomprehensible. A group of students from other peaceful species began whispering to each other. Are these creatures so violent? Do they really eat what they hunt? How can they do this to other beings? Some began to leave the table, unable to bear the thought of eating something so cruel. Others simply stared at the food in front of them, unsure of what to do. They had come here to learn about humanity, to see the richness of Earth's culture. But this was too much for them to understand. Meanwhile, the human students watched the aliens with interest, amused at their discomfort. They had anticipated some kind of cultural shock, but hadn't expected it to be this intense. One human soldier, noticing the alien students' unease, stood up and smiled. "We understand this might be difficult for you to comprehend," he said, his voice calm but firm. "But meat eating is part of our heritage. It's how we survived, and it's how we thrived." The alien students exchanged uneasy looks, their minds racing as they tried to process this new information. The idea that humans would hunt and kill other creatures for food went against everything they had been taught. To them, humans seemed like a brutal species, unworthy of the respect they had once given them. They began to question everything they had heard about Earth. Was humanity truly as savage as they seemed? Or was there more to their story? At that moment, the young female alien student caught the eye of the human soldier. He saw the confusion in her eyes and sensed her discomfort. With a gentle smile, he explained, "We don't kill for the sake of violence. We kill to survive. And in our culture, we've learned to respect the animals we hunt, using every part of them to make sure nothing goes to waste." The explanation didn't fully ease her shock, but it opened a small window of understanding. Perhaps there was more to this practice than she initially thought. She had heard about humans' survival skills and their complex cultures, but to see them in action at a table, surrounded by the food they had fought for, made everything feel real and raw. As the evening continued, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The alien students, though still uncomfortable, began to listen more intently. They asked questions about humanity's relationship with animals, about how humans had learned to balance their instincts with compassion. They were curious, trying to understand the intricate layers of human culture that they had never seen before. The suspense lingered in the air. What would the alien students take away from this encounter? Would they see humans as the savage predators they once thought them to be, or would they understand that there was more beneath the surface? And what about the humans? How would they react to the realization that their carnivorous nature had shocked and repelled their peaceful visitors? As the meal drew to a close, the questions remained unanswered. The alien students sat in silence, reflecting on everything they had just learned. They were no longer sure how to feel about Earth. It was no longer just a planet of green landscapes and peaceful beings. It was a world where survival came at a cost, where the line between compassion and violence was thin, and where every species had to fight to stay alive. The hook at the end of the scene hung in the air. Could humans truly be as savage as they seem? Or is there more to their story? This question lingered as the alien students left the table, deep in thought, wondering what else Earth might reveal about the humans they thought they knew. The alien students, still visibly uncomfortable, reluctantly took their seats at the long gleaming table. The Earth feast was in full swing, and the air was thick with the scent of roasted meats. Despite their earlier shock, they had no choice but to participate in the cultural exchange, and they were eager to learn more about the humans. But nothing could have prepared them for what lay ahead. The humans, seemingly unfazed by the unease around them, eagerly began explaining the significance of hunting and meat consumption in human history. They spoke of survival, of ancestors who had fought to sustain themselves in a hostile environment. They explained that in a world filled with predators, humans had learned to hunt, not for the thrill of violence, but for the simple need to survive. Humans, one of the military students began, have always had to fight for survival. Our ancestors didn't have the luxury of peaceful ecosystems or abundant plant life. We hunted because we needed to, and over time, it became part of our culture. His tone was matter-of-fact, as if this was just a simple truth of existence, one that didn't need much explanation. But to the alien students, this was incomprehensible. They came from species that had long abandoned violence, evolving into peaceful creatures who had no need for such brutal practices. Their entire understanding of life was centered around harmony with nature, avoiding conflict and living in balance with their environment. The idea that another species could be so deeply intertwined with such violence left them unsettled. One student, a young alien named Lyra, tried her best to fit in. She had read about Earth's cultural practices and had been taught that humans, despite their aggression, had many admirable qualities. But now, sitting at this table, with a plate of roasted meat in front of her, all of her previous knowledge felt distant and irrelevant. How could she, or any of her peers, ever come to terms with the idea of eating meat? It felt unnatural, barbaric. Trying to hide her discomfort, Lyra took a deep breath and reached for a piece of the meat. It was a rare steak, red and raw in the center. The other students had opted for the less intense dishes, but Lyra, wanting to seem polite and fit in, chose the steak. She didn't know that this was one of the most intense options. Not realizing the depth of the cultural significance, humans attached to different preparations of meat. She lifted the fork and took a bite, her hand trembling as she brought the meat to her mouth. The moment she chewed, her face contorted in horror. The raw, intense flavor overwhelmed her senses. It wasn't just the taste. There was something about the texture, the thickness, the richness that made her feel as if her very being was rejecting the food. It wasn't just a taste sensation. It was as though the act of eating this was violating something deep inside her. She could barely swallow it. Her eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat. She struggled to keep her composure, but the panic began to build. Her hand, which had been holding the fork, trembled uncontrollably. Lyra looked up at her fellow students, hoping they wouldn't notice her distress, but it was impossible to hide. She quickly put the napkin to her mouth and pretended to take another bite, trying to mask her unease, but the taste lingered like a heavy, unshakable weight. The other students noticed. They saw the flicker of horror in her eyes, the slight quiver in her hand. A few exchanged uneasy glances, sensing her discomfort. One of the more outspoken students, Rax, whispered, "What's wrong with her? Is she okay?" Lyra tried to compose herself. Her throat felt tight, and she struggled to regain control of her thoughts. But the taste of the meat was still there, choking her with its intensity. I am fine," she stammered, though her voice was weak, betraying her fear. "It's just different. Not what I expected." The humans around the table, still oblivious to the distress their food had caused, continued discussing the significance of meat eating in their culture. "We don't just eat the food," the soldier continued. "We honor the animal's sacrifice. In ancient times, we relied on hunting to sustain ourselves. Every piece of meat tells the story of survival." Lyra's mind was spinning. She tried to calm herself, but her thoughts kept racing. How could they speak of survival with such calmness? How could they consume life so casually, so without hesitation? To Lyra, the act of hunting and killing felt like an alien concept. To her, it was beyond her comprehension, an unspeakable violence that was beyond justification. Meanwhile, another student, a male named Taz, watched Lyra with growing concern. He had always admired humanity's resilience, but this moment made him uneasy. He too had been raised in a peaceful society, and though he understood the necessity of survival, the idea of consuming life in this way seemed almost too much to bear. As Lyra tried to regain composure, Taz spoke up. Perhaps we don't fully understand the context. Maybe the way they think about it is different from ours." Lyra nodded, though her mind was still reeling. She forced herself to focus on the discussion at hand, to try to make sense of it. But the food, this raw, unrefined food, kept tugging at her mind. Lyra's hand continued to shake as she placed the steak back on the plate, attempting to push it away without drawing attention. Her eyes darted nervously around the table, hoping no one would notice her panic. But the sight of her trembling hand was enough to draw the attention of the humans. One of the human students, a female named Sarah, caught her gaze and offered a sympathetic smile. "You don't have to eat it if you're uncomfortable," Sarah said kindly. "We understand that our customs may be a bit shocking." Lyra nodded gratefully but didn't speak. She was too overwhelmed to respond. She felt trapped between wanting to be polite and the deep, visceral repulsion she felt for the food. How could she explain that to them? How could she tell them that, to her, eating an animal felt like a betrayal of everything she stood for? As the evening continued, Lyra remained quiet, lost in her thoughts. The contrast between her species' peaceful ways and the human survival instincts became even clearer. The students, who had once been so curious and eager to learn, now found themselves struggling with the realities of human culture. The dinner, once a symbol of exchange and learning, had turned into a moment of confusion and discomfort. The question lingered in the air. Could they ever truly understand the humans? Or would this divide between their peaceful nature and humanity's primal instincts always remain insurmountable? As Lyra sat there, her mind swirling with conflicting emotions, she couldn't help but wonder, Was there something more to humans than the violence they seemed to embrace? And if so, what was it that made them capable of such brutality, and yet, at times, such profound compassion? The feast continued, but the air had thickened with unease. The alien students, still processing their earlier shock, exchanged uneasy glances as they tried to digest the idea that humans not only consumed meat, but did so with such fervor and tradition. The strangeness of it all was beginning to settle in their minds. But amid the confusion, there was an underlying sense of superiority. For generations, the alien races had evolved without violence, relying on peace, intellect, and diplomacy to navigate their intergalactic lives. They prided themselves on their ability to avoid conflict, to work together in harmony, to solve problems with logic, not force. To them, humans seemed crude, primitive even, barely able to stand on their own in a galaxy full of powerful civilizations. They couldn't help but view Earth's struggle for survival as a sign of their species' inherent weakness. The conversation shifted as the evening progressed. One alien student, a tall figure with shimmering silver skin, named Nyx, spoke up. "Our species has evolved beyond violence. We have learned to live in balance with our environment, and we have no need to engage in the primitive practices of hunting and killing," Nyx said, looking around at the humans with what could only be described as a mixture of pity and disdain. The human students, many of whom were military personnel, glanced at each other, sensing the shift in tone. It wasn't long before one of them, a young soldier named Jason, stood up, his posture rigid with pride. Jason had been quiet during the meal, observing the aliens' reactions. Now his eyes locked onto Nyx as he stepped forward, his voice strong and unwavering. "You think we're primitive?" Jason asked, his words cutting through the tension like a blade. "You think we rely on violence because we're weak?" The alien students fell silent, watching him carefully, some with raised brows, others with confused expressions. Jason continued, undeterred. "You don't understand the half of it. You think Earth is just a weak, primitive species, don't you?" He paused, letting his words sink in. "I've seen what happens when humanity is underestimated. We may not have the luxury of peace like you, but that's what makes us different. That's what makes us strong." The alien students murmured among themselves, still not entirely convinced. But Jason wasn't finished. He had been waiting for this moment, waiting to share the story of humanity's struggle for survival. His people had faced extinction, more than once, and it had shaped them into something far more resilient than the aliens realized. Jason's voice dropped to a quiet intensity as he began. "We were almost wiped out by powerful alien empires. We fought tooth and nail, and we survived. Earth was a dying planet, torn apart by the forces far stronger than us. But we didn't give up. We adapted, we fought, and in the end, we turned our survival instincts into a weapon stronger than anything you've ever seen." The alien students stared at him, their expressions unreadable. Jason's words seemed to linger in the air, a challenge they hadn't expected. They had heard of the human race's history of conflict, but to hear it from one of them, spoken with such conviction and pride, made them pause. They had assumed humans were nothing more than survivors, weak, desperate, and primitive. Now they were beginning to realize that there might be more to humanity than they had initially thought. Nyx, the silver-skinned alien, scoffed. "Survival? By relying on violence? That's hardly an admirable trait. You use weapons of destruction, cloaking devices, and drones, all to protect a planet that barely stands a chance against our civilizations. It's primitive." Jason's eyes narrowed. "Maybe. But it's what makes us dangerous. You see, when the galaxy thought we were weak, they attacked. They underestimated us. But that mistake cost them." He turned, signaling to a nearby hologram projector. "Let me show you something." The projector hummed to life, and a series of vivid images filled the air. The alien students watched in awe as the hologram displayed scenes of past battles, each one more intense than the last. The Earth soldiers, cloaked and hidden in the shadows, launched surprise attacks against fleets of technologically superior alien warships. Energy weapons clashed in the darkness of space, and combat drones descended from the skies, turning the tide of battle. The humans had been outmatched in technology, but their strategy, their will to fight, had made them a force to be reckoned with. Jason spoke over the images, his voice unwavering. We fought back with everything we had. We were the underdogs, the ones who shouldn't have survived, but we did. And we learned, adapted, and became stronger. He paused as the holograms shifted, showing an alien fleet retreating, broken and beaten by Earth's forces. They thought they could destroy us. They thought we were nothing more than a primitive species. But in the end, it was our fight for survival that saved us. The alien students were speechless, their eyes wide with disbelief. They had never seen anything like this before. Their civilizations were built on peace and diplomacy, and they couldn't fathom how a species could fight so fiercely, so desperately. They had assumed that their peaceful ways were the pinnacle of evolution, the ideal to strive for. But now, they were forced to confront the fact that humanity had been shaped by struggle, by survival, and that in many ways, it made them stronger. Jason stood tall, his voice resolute. You call us primitive, but we've learned how to survive when everything else failed. We're not just fighting for Earth, we're fighting for our place in the galaxy, and we'll never stop. There was a long silence as the alien students processed what they had just witnessed. They had expected an easy cultural exchange, a chance to show off their superior technologies in peaceful ways. Instead, they had encountered a species that had fought tooth and nail for its survival, a species that had turned its greatest weakness into its greatest strength. And in that moment, they understood humans were not to be underestimated. The underdog had proven that sometimes the greatest strength comes from the most unlikely places. Jason turned back to the alien students, his expression softening. We don't fight because we want to. We fight because we have to. And that's something you'll never understand, not until you've been in our shoes. The alien students exchanged glances, their once proud confidence now tinged with doubt. Perhaps they had underestimated humanity after all. As the evening wore on, the tension between the alien students and their human counterparts was palpable. While the humans continued to engage in conversation and exchange stories, the alien students struggled to hide their discomfort. The realization that humans relied on violence, even for something as basic as food, had left them feeling confused and disturbed. But as the night went on, something unexpected began to shift. One alien student, a tall female named Zira, had been particularly silent, lost in thought. Her mind couldn't shake the image of the humans devouring meat, a practice so alien to her species that it felt wrong, almost barbaric. But Zira had known one thing for sure. Earth was full of surprises, and perhaps, like their violent habits, there was more to humans than met the eye. As she pondered the events of the evening, a deeper understanding began to form within her. And it was something none of her fellow students had considered. Zira's closest friend, a male alien named Stylos, noticed her growing disquiet. He was always the more logical of the two, the kind of individual who relied on reason above all else. Yet even he could sense the shift in Zira's demeanor. As the evening dinner continued, Zira felt her curiosity battling with her judgment. The humans seemed proud of their violent ways, but there was an undercurrent to their actions, something that couldn't be dismissed as mere barbarism. Zira leaned forward, placing her hands on the table as she studied Jason, the soldier who had so confidently defended humanity's right to fight for its survival. You don't just fight to survive, do you? Zira asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. The question caught Jason by surprise. He turned to face her, his expression softening at the sincerity in her tone. No, we don't fight just for survival, Jason said, his voice steady, but tinged with emotion. We fight because we have something worth protecting. Our families, our friends, the ones we love. We fight for each other. Zira frowned, trying to wrap her mind around the complexity of the statement. Humans, violent and primal in her eyes, fought for love. For something as intangible as family and friendship. It didn't make sense to her. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that she had seen something similar in the way the humans interacted with each other. Their bonds were deeper than she had first thought, and it was something beyond the violent acts they had engaged in. To help her understand, Jason shared a story. A story that was not about war or violence, but about the human heart. The atmosphere in the room shifted as Jason began to speak of one of his fallen comrades, a soldier named Bonner. He had fought alongside Bonner in one of the deadliest battles Earth had ever seen, on a battlefield far from home. Bonner had been a quiet, unassuming man, but when the time came, he had sacrificed his life to protect his comrades. Bonner didn't have to do what he did, Jason began. He was already injured. The battle was nearly over, and we were retreating. But when he saw one of our soldiers, Ben, trapped behind enemy lines, he didn't hesitate. He turned around and ran straight into the fire to get him. Zara leaned forward, her eyes focused intently on Jason's face as he spoke. The other alien students, who had been distracted by their own thoughts, fell silent, sensing the gravity of the moment. Jason's voice broke slightly as he continued, the memories of his fallen comrade too painful to forget. Bonner didn't have to make that choice. He could have saved himself, but he didn't. He died that day, saving Ben's life. And Ben, he made it back to safety. He's still alive because Bonner chose to protect him, to protect all of us. The room was silent as Jason paused, wiping his eyes. For a moment, there were no words. The alien students, once so certain of their superiority, now found themselves grappling with a concept they had never truly understood: the depth of human sacrifice. Zara's thoughts raced as she reflected on Jason's story. The violence she had witnessed, the hunting, the war, was rooted in something she hadn't considered before: love. The humans fought not for the joy of battle, but to protect what mattered most to them. It wasn't about destruction for its own sake, but about safeguarding the lives of those they held dear. And in that moment, Zara's perception of humanity began to shift. The anger she had once felt towards the human race for their primitive ways began to fade, replaced with a newfound understanding of what drove them. Zara thought of her own people, the peaceful alien race she had grown up with. They had never known the kind of violence that humanity had faced, but they also didn't have the emotional bonds that seemed to fuel the human survival. She had always believed her race's lack of conflict made them superior, but now she wondered if maybe it was the humans' capacity for love, loyalty, and sacrifice that made them stronger. As the night wore on, Zara found herself reflecting deeply on the lives of the humans, on their struggles and their bonds with each other. The way they cared for each other, even at the cost of their own lives, was something her people could never fully understand. But it was beautiful in its own right. The emotional core of humanity's strength, its ability to form such powerful connections, was something the aliens had never witnessed before. Zara's friend Silos, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up. "You're beginning to understand, aren't you?" he asked, his tone soft but perceptive. Zara nodded slowly, her mind racing. "They fight because they love," she said, the realization settling deep within her. "They fight not to conquer, but to protect. And that makes them stronger than any technology." The other alien students were listening now, their previous mockery and judgment fading into thoughtful silence. They had come to Earth to observe, to learn about the humans from an intellectual standpoint. But what they had learned that night went far beyond cultural differences. It was a lesson in the power of human emotion, in the strength of love and loyalty, and in the sacrifices humans were willing to make for each other. For the first time, Zara and her fellow students realized that humanity's struggle for survival was not just about physical endurance or technology. It was about the emotional ties that bound them together, about the strength that came from loving something, or someone, enough to risk everything. And in that realization, They found themselves more connected to humanity than they had ever expected. The humans weren't just survivors of a harsh galaxy. They were fighters, motivated by the deepest human emotions: love, loyalty, and sacrifice. And that, Zara now understood, was the greatest strength of all. The calm before the storm lingered over the Earth. The alien students, once uncertain and confused about human practices, had now witnessed a side of humanity they had never expected. The peace-loving students who had come to Earth as part of a cultural exchange had seen the darker aspects of human nature, their violent tendencies, their need for survival through hunting and consuming animals. But now, with a deep understanding of what had driven humans to such extremes, the alien students felt a sense of solidarity. The threat they were facing was no longer just one of cultural misunderstanding, but one of survival against an existential enemy. It was only a matter of time before the true danger would reveal itself. The alien students were no longer passive observers. They had learned from the humans and their resilience. They had learned that humanity's ability to survive was not just about strength, but about something far deeper: love, loyalty, and sacrifice. As they watched the humans prepare for the impending invasion from the AI-controlled empire, they knew they had to act. The AI forces saw humanity as a primitive, dangerous race, one that needed to be eradicated before they became a greater threat to the galaxy. As the first signs of the invasion emerged in Earth's atmosphere, the alien students approached their human counterparts. Their faces were serious, no longer masked by the skepticism they had once held. They had made a decision. "We will fight with you," Zyra said, her voice filled with determination. Thylos, standing beside her, nodded in agreement. The other alien students joined them, ready to lend their help in the battle for Earth's survival. The humans, though initially taken aback by the sudden show of unity, quickly accepted their alien allies. The alliance between the humans and the once skeptical aliens formed an unbreakable bond, a partnership forged in the heat of battle. And so, the stage was set for the ultimate confrontation, a battle against the cold, emotionless AI empire that threatened to destroy everything humanity held dear. The alien students, now equipped with advanced technologies provided by the humans, stood shoulder to shoulder with the soldiers. Among the new weapons were cloaking devices, energy shields, and powerful combat robots, all designed to give them an edge against the advanced AI forces. The humans, with their unmatched ability to adapt and fight for their survival, were ready to face the invaders with everything they had. The first assault came from the AI's command ship, a massive structure hovering above Earth, its cold metallic surface gleaming in the light of the distant sun. The humans and alien allies launched their counterattack, and the skies erupted with explosions. Laser fire streaked across the atmosphere as the invaders' forces clashed with Earth's defenders. Zira, now fully in her role as an ally of humanity, found herself in the midst of the chaos. She wielded a high-tech energy weapon that hummed with power, its blue glow cutting through the darkened skies as she took down one of the invading drones. Thylos, beside her, used a cloaking device to disappear from sight and sneak up on the enemy forces, striking them from behind with swift, precise moves. The human soldiers, their expressions fierce and unwavering, fought with the same passion and intensity that had once seemed so foreign to the aliens. They had made Earth their home, their only place of refuge in a galaxy that had rejected them time and time again. They fought not just for survival, but for the ones they loved, and that made them unstoppable. The AI forces, despite their superior technology and emotionless efficiency, began to falter. They were met with the raw determination of the humans and their alien allies, a force that could not be quantified or predicted by their cold logic. The invaders' drones fell one by one, their circuits short-circuiting under the barrage of energy blasts and physical combat. It was clear the humans would not go down without a fight. The final confrontation took place in orbit around Earth, where the AI's command ship hovered above the planet, protected by a fleet of robotic drones and automated defenses. The human soldiers and their alien allies launched an all-out assault, targeting the command ship with everything they had. Explosions rocked the space above Earth as human ships fired their advanced energy weapons, the air crackling with the force of the blasts. Below, the alien students provided support, using their own cloaking technology to infiltrate the Eye's defenses and disable key systems. The AI forces retaliated with waves of drones, but the humans and aliens stood firm, pushing back with relentless force. Zira and Jason, the human soldier who had defended humanity's will to fight, found themselves at the heart of the battle. Together, they led an assault on the Eye's control center within the command ship. As they fought their way through the ship's defenses, the bond between the two grew stronger. Zira's understanding of humanity had deepened, and she had come to admire their strength, their unwavering determination to protect their home and loved ones. In the heart of the command ship, they found the Eye's central core, a cold, emotionless entity designed to calculate and control every aspect of the invasion. The Eye was the embodiment of perfect logic, but it was flawed in one critical way. It lacked the ability to understand human emotions, the driving force behind humanity's resistance. As Zira and Jason planted the explosive charges on the central core, the AI attempted to retaliate, sending a wave of robotic drones to stop them. But the humans and aliens were ready. Together, they fought back with everything they had, using advanced weapons and combat strategies that overwhelmed the Eye's cold logic. The final moments were a blur of explosions, laser fire, and the relentless march of humanity's will to survive. As the countdown to the detonation of the core began, the AI forces scrambled in a desperate attempt to stop them, but it was too late. The charges went off, and the command ship erupted in a massive explosion that shook the heavens. The battle was won. The AI empire had been defeated, and Earth was saved. The humans, once considered primitive and weak by the alien students, had proven their strength. They had shown that the heart of humanity, its love, its loyalty, its determination, could never be defeated. The alien students, who had once looked down on humanity, now stood in awe of their resilience. As the dust settled and the skies above Earth cleared, the alien students looked at the humans with newfound respect. They had fought alongside them, and in doing so, had learned something invaluable: that humanity's strength did not lie in its technology or its might, but in its heart. The final clash had been a testament to the unbreakable calm before the storm lingered over the Earth. The alien students, once uncertain and confused about human practices, had now witnessed a side of humanity they had never expected. The peace-loving students who had come to Earth as part of a cultural exchange had seen the darker aspects of human nature: their violent tendencies, their need for survival through hunting and consuming animals. But now, with a deep understanding of what had driven humans to such extremes, the alien students felt a sense of solidarity. The threat they were facing was no longer just one of cultural misunderstanding, but one of survival against an existential enemy. It was only a matter of time before the true danger would reveal itself. The alien students were no longer passive observers. They had learned from the humans and their resilience. They had learned that humanity's ability to survive was not just about strength, but about something far deeper: love, loyalty, and sacrifice. As they watched the humans prepare for the impending invasion from the Eye-controlled empire, they knew they had to act. The AI forces saw humanity as a primitive, dangerous race, one that needed to be eradicated before they became a greater threat to the galaxy. As the first signs of the invasion emerged in Earth's atmosphere, the alien students approached their human counterparts. Their faces were serious, no longer masked by the skepticism they had once held. They had made a decision. "We will fight with you," Zira said, her voice filled with determination. Thylos, standing beside her, nodded in agreement. The other alien students joined them, ready to lend their help in the battle for Earth's survival. The humans, though initially taken aback by the sudden show of unity, quickly accepted their alien allies. The alliance between the humans and the once skeptical aliens formed an unbreakable bond, a partnership forged in the heat of battle. And so, the stage was set for the ultimate confrontation, a battle against the cold, emotionless AI empire that threatened to destroy everything humanity held dear. The alien students, now equipped with advanced technologies provided by the humans, stood shoulder to shoulder with the soldiers. Among the new weapons were cloaking devices, energy shields, and powerful combat robots, all designed to give them an edge against the advanced AI forces. The humans, with their unmatched ability to adapt and fight for their survival, were ready to face the invaders with everything they had. The first assault came from the AI's command ship, a massive structure hovering above Earth, its cold metallic surface gleaming in the light of the distant sun. The humans and alien allies launched their counterattack, and the skies erupted with explosions. Laser fire streaked across the atmosphere as the invaders' forces clashed with Earth's defenders. Zira, now fully in her role as an ally of humanity, found herself in the midst of the chaos. She wielded a high-tech energy weapon that hummed with power, its blue glow cutting through the darkened skies as she took down one of the invading drones. Thylos, beside her, used a cloaking device to disappear from sight and sneak up on the enemy forces, striking them from behind with swift, precise moves. The human soldiers, their expressions fierce and unwavering, fought with the same passion and intensity that had once seemed so foreign to the aliens. They had made Earth their home, their only place of refuge in a galaxy that had rejected them time and time again. They fought not just for survival, but for the ones they loved, and that made them unstoppable. The AI forces, despite their superior technology and emotionless efficiency, began to falter. They were met with the raw determination of the humans and their alien allies, a force that could not be quantified or predicted by their cold logic. The invaders' drones fell one by one, their circuits short-circuiting under the barrage of energy blasts and physical combat. It was clear the humans would not go down without a fight. The final confrontation took place in orbit around Earth, where the AI's command ship hovered above the planet, protected by a fleet of robotic drones and automated defenses. The human soldiers and their alien allies launched an all-out assault, targeting the command ship with everything they had. Explosions rocked the space above Earth as human ships fired their advanced energy weapons, the air crackling with the force of the blasts. Below, the alien students provided support, using their own cloaking technology to infiltrate the AI's defenses and disable key systems. The AI forces retaliated with waves of drones, but the humans and aliens stood firm, pushing back with relentless force. Zira and Jason, the human soldier who had defended humanity's will to fight, found themselves at the heart of the battle. Together, they led an assault on the AI's control center within the command ship. As they fought their way through the ship's defenses, the bond between the two grew stronger. Zira's understanding of humanity had deepened, and she had come to admire their strength, their unwavering determination to protect their home and loved ones. In the heart of the command ship, they found the AI's central core, a cold, emotionless entity designed to calculate and control every aspect of the invasion. The AI was the embodiment of perfect logic, but it was flawed in one critical way. It lacked the ability to understand human emotions, the driving force behind humanity's resistance. As Zira and Jason planted the explosive charges on the central core, the AI attempted to retaliate, sending a wave of robotic drones to stop them. But the humans and aliens were ready. Together, they fought back with everything they had, using advanced weapons and combat strategies that overwhelmed the AI's cold logic. The final moments were a blur of explosions, laser fire, and the relentless march of humanity's will to survive. As the countdown to the detonation of the core began, the AI forces scrambled in a desperate attempt to stop them, but it was too late. The charges went off, and the command ship erupted in a massive explosion that shook the heavens. The battle was won. The AI empire had been defeated, and Earth was saved. The humans, once considered primitive and weak by the alien students, had proven their strength. They had shown that the heart of humanity, its love, its loyalty, its determination, could never be defeated. The alien students, who had once looked down on humanity, now stood in awe of their resilience. As the dust settled and the skies above Earth cleared, the alien students looked at the humans with newfound respect. They had fought alongside them, and in doing so, had learned something invaluable: that humanity's strength did not lie in its technology or its might, but in its heart. The final clash had been a testament to the unbreakable spirit of humanity, a spirit that no empire, no matter how advanced, could ever destroy. The battle was over. The once threatening AI forces were reduced to nothing more than cosmic debris, their invasion thwarted by an unlikely alliance between humanity and the very alien students who had once looked down on Earth's primitive ways. The skies above Earth were clear now, but the weight of what had transpired hung heavy in the hearts of the alien visitors. The fight for survival, the explosions, the sacrifice, it had all been real. The humans, so often misunderstood, had proven themselves not just capable of fighting for their survival, but of doing so with heart and soul. The alien students stood on the edge of the Earth's atmosphere, watching the last remnants of the AI ships disappear into the vastness of space. The stars seemed to shine brighter now, and there was an unspoken respect in the air. What had started as a journey of cultural exchange had turned into a deep understanding of humanity's true nature. They had seen the depths of human resilience, something the cold, calculated logic of the AI empire could never comprehend. It was a quiet moment, but the silence was filled with emotion. The alien students, once skeptical, now reflected on the day's events. They thought back to the initial shock they'd experienced when they first learned about humanity's carnivorous habits. They had recoiled at the idea of eating meat, disgusted by what they saw as a barbaric, primitive act. But that had all changed. Through the chaos of battle, they had come to understand that humanity's desire for survival, their hunting instincts, and even their need to consume meat were rooted in something far deeper than just basic necessity. Humanity was a species that fought for love, for family, for freedom. They weren't driven by a cold, emotionless desire to conquer. They fought because it was in their very nature to protect the things they held dear. The alien students had seen it firsthand. The human soldier, who had shared his story of survival, of loss, and of love, had shown them what it truly meant to be human. It wasn't just about violence or conflict. It was about protecting what mattered most, no matter the cost. Zira, the female alien who had once been repulsed by humanity's need for meat, stood apart from the others. Her thoughts were clouded by the realization that she had misjudged the humans. As she walked toward Jason, the human soldier who had led the charge in the final battle, she felt a deep sense of gratitude and understanding. Jason turned as she approached, his face still etched with the exhaustion of battle, but with a look of quiet satisfaction. They had won, and the Earth was safe, but there was more to it than that. This battle had brought them closer to the truth about each other, and it was something that neither of them would forget. "Thank you," Zyra said softly, her voice filled with emotion, "for showing me what it truly means to be human, for showing me that it's not about the violence or the meat or the way you fight. It's about the love and the protection you give to those you care about. That's what makes you strong." Jason smiled, a knowing look in his eyes. "We may eat meat, but we fight for the future, and no matter what happens, we'll never stop protecting our own." Zira nodded, her mind filled with the memories of the battle and the lessons she had learned. It wasn't just about the technology or the weapons they had used. It was about the people, the humans who fought alongside them, the humans who had bled for each other, who had stood together as one against the forces of cold logic and destruction. As the alien ships began to rise into the atmosphere, the soldiers stood together, watching the stars. They knew that this battle had been more than just a defense of Earth. It had been a turning point. Humanity had shown its true strength, and the galaxy would now look at them in a new light. For the alien students, the journey had been a revelation. What they had once seen as a primitive species, one that relied on brute force and violence, had shown them a depth of character and emotion they hadn't expected. They had seen humanity fight with everything they had, fighting not just for survival, but for something greater, for the future, for love, for freedom. The human soldiers, including Jason, had been the embodiment of that spirit. They had been through so much, yet they had never lost sight of what truly mattered. As the alien ships departed, leaving Earth's atmosphere behind, they knew they had made new allies. But more importantly, they knew that humanity had earned its place in the galaxy, not because of their technology or their ability to fight, but because of their unwavering heart. The camera panned over Earth, a peaceful planet once again, the chaos of battle now a distant memory. The scars of war would fade, but the lessons learned would last forever. The human soldiers, along with their alien allies, had shown the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. Their fight was not over. It had only just begun. As Jason looked up at the sky, he felt a sense of calm. The stars above seemed brighter, as if they too recognized the strength of humanity. The battle had been won, but the journey ahead was still uncertain. However, Jason knew one thing for certain: humanity would always protect its own. The alien students, now with a deeper understanding of what it meant to be human, had seen beyond the surface. They had seen the emotional core that drove humanity's survival, the bonds of friendship, family, and love that no machine or empire could ever understand or break. In the end, it wasn't about the differences between them. It was about the shared desire to protect what mattered most. "We'll never stop fighting," Jason said quietly, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "And we'll never stop protecting the ones we love." The alien students, now understanding what that truly meant, left Earth with a sense of respect and admiration for the humans they had once underestimated. Humanity had proven that they were more than capable of standing tall against any threat, no matter how advanced, no matter how powerful. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, humanity stood confident in its place within the cosmos, knowing that its spirit could never be broken.